Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's program. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Marcia Eli. I'm from the Brooklyn Public Library's Center for Brooklyn History and the library's Arts and Culture team, BPL Presents. Tonight, we have the honor of hosting Pulitzer Prize and National Book Award-winning author Alice Walker in a conversation about her new book, Gathering Blossoms Under Fire. Gathering is a compilation of 50 years of journals. As you all know, Alice Walker is the author of The Color Purple, The Temple of My Familiar, Horses Make a Landscape Look More Beautiful, The Way Forward is with a Broken Heart, Now is the Time to Open Your Heart, and many other works of fiction, poetry, and nonfiction. Her writings have been translated into more than 24 languages, and more than 15 million copies of her books have been sold worldwide. And there's so much more to say. But I'm going to move on so that we can get to seeing her and hearing her. Tonight, her conversation partner is Imani Perry, the Hughes Roger Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. Imani's latest book is South to America, A Journey Below the Mason-Dixon to Understand the Soul of a Nation. She is also the author of Looking for Lorraine, The Radiant and Radical Life of Lorraine Hansberry, Breathe, A Letter to My Sons, Vexy Thing on Gender and Liberation, and May We Forever Stand, A History of the Black National Anthem. And again, there's so much more to say about Amani Perry. I am so excited to hear what these two amazing women have to say. But before I hand it over to them, I have a few quick notes for all of you. First, we are going to put in the chat a link to a local bookstore, the community bookstore, so that you can explore Gathering Blossoms Under Fire on your own. And if you so desire, purchase a copy from an independent business. Second, you have the option for closed captioning tonight, as you do for all of our programs. That button is at the bottom of your screen. And finally, and most importantly, I hope you'll share your questions this evening. Type them into the Q&A box, which is also at the bottom of your screen throughout the program, and Imani will take a number of them, as many as we can fit in at the end of the program. So with that, it is my enormous honor to welcome Alice Walker and Amani Perry to join me here on the screen. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. And I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marcia. Good evening, everyone. And I just want to begin by saying I am, as I said on social media, over the moon, honored, delighted to be able to be in conversation with you. I told Marcia that when I got my copy of the book, I did not move for 2 days. I didn't. I mean, I took my child to school, but beyond that, it really is just a gorgeous revelation. So thank you for letting me talk to you about it. And I have tons of questions, but I want to start actually with its composition and with the beautiful, brilliant Valerie Boyd, who edited it with you, and ask you to talk about that process.
Can you remember what you just asked me? Because I want to thank you for your book and your work on Lorraine Hansberry. This was a major gift to us, and we really appreciate it. And we will appreciate it for years and decades to come if we have those. So thank you so much. Okay? Now, what was it you were asking me? About Valerie.
Valerie.
Well, Valerie Boyd, the wonderful, incomparable, and we just loved each other, decided we loved working together. I just adored her book on Zora Neale Hurston. And we decided to work together, editing, her editing my journals. And how she did it is a miracle, she and her colleagues, because my handwriting is dreadful. It really is. It's just barely legible, even to me. But they did it, and they did it with such care and such love. And she was just, my sister every step of the way. We could talk about anything disagree about some things overnight, but by morning we saw, where our paths converged. It was a great experience. And we kept it going for 7 years, even though we knew that she was possibly leaving. And that's it's an amazing courage, to know that this is possible while you're working on something and continuing to work on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
And yes. I'm so, I mean, I am directly grateful to you, and part of the story of this journey is bringing Zora Neale Hurston, ensuring that she is not just remembered but recognized for her genius. And I think that's something people don't necessarily realize. That's nothing to be taken for granted.
no, no,
Right? I mean,
never.
and also and Valerie and her biography was certainly a model for me, as well as was I Love Myself When I Am Laughing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I always forget that book, but it was such fun to do that book.
It was well, it's unforgettable to me. And as you said, I mean, one of the things that I think is important for people who have not yet read the book to understand is that this is not sort of what you generally expect when you read journals, right? So because it is a work of art, it's a tapestry, right? So there are these arcs all the way through. There's journeys, and they're intersecting, but it's and I don't, it's a testament to how you're an artist, even in your interior life deeply, but also it's composed beautifully. And so I wanted to ask about some of those journeys that we see, right, that we read. And one is a spiritual journey, I think, right? So there's a lot of, your journal is also a site of prayer, right?
Yes.
And that develops.
Mhm.
And I'm curious if you could talk about sort of the relationship between your spiritual life and your creative life.
I'd be happy to, but I want to explain to you why my screen is moving. It's
Yes.
moving because I want to be looking more directly at you, and for some reason, I seem to be looking down. So I'm trying to prop the thing up with I'm trying to prop it up with some books, and so it looks a little one-sided, but I'm paying attention all along here. And yes, it's incredibly true what you're saying about it being a spiritual exercise. I started writing a long time ago, but when I really got into meditation, I definitely wrote every morning. I mean, I would get Rebecca, your friend, off to school, complaining and kvetching about whatever. By then, I would mop my brow and get back into bed with pillows behind me and meditate for as long as I could do it without some interruption coming from something. And then after that, I would be in the proper frame of mind to journal. Which I thought of as basically saving my life by helping me understand my life. Great medicine journaling. And I'm very thankful that I was able to find that thread, leading to the Minotaur, so that I could go in and check out the Minotaur and get out again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
So like that. Mm-hmm.
I do. I mean, and it actually made me say, oh, I need to return to journaling, because it is a spiritual exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Funny, I will say, and I'm sure you get this all the time, that people project themselves somewhat onto your work, but Rebecca and I were in school together, both sort of born in the South, went up north as small children. My mother was born in the same year you were, just a month away from, and so there's this, so it resonated deeply for me also as a story of kind of a generational transformation, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? The movement, and then what movement people were able to create with the sort of opened up life. And one of the other threads I saw was the creation of home, like departing home, but then making of homes, plural.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel or how at this point, how was home, I don't know, defined for you, or what do you feel like you come through on the question of what home?
Oh, well, it's a long journey, to get home, especially if you never had a house, which was my situation and the situation of millions of people in the world, and especially in the South, sharecropping people who worked in the, picking the food we eat. I mean, even today, don't have, housing really, not that they can call their own. And so it's a passion for many people in the world to have a home. And I was definitely one of those people. And I still am. I mean, I think home is one of the foundational things that people should be guaranteed. I mean, everyone should be guaranteed that if nothing else on this planet, you always have a home and you always have food. I mean, why not?
Right.
If you can spend all these billions for weapons, you can definitely build some houses and feed people.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's for me. There's two times when you say variations on the literature is not the point, right? That it's in some sense a vehicle for the larger sort of spiritual, political, ethical.
Well, you need to grow. You need to grow, and you need to watch yourself grow. If you don't watch yourself grow, you may fall back. You may fall back anyway, because life is just like that.
Right.
2 steps here and then But journaling is very helpful. I mean, it can really keep you on track because you get to see where you were and how you were, and usually who you were with, which
Right.
may not have been a good thing.
Right. Were you surprised when you
What?
you went back over them? Like, did you remember? I mean, you say that you say you don't have a great memory, and that's part of the benefit of journaling. But when you return to those moments, were you ever surprised by them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because of course, life, I don't know about anybody else's life, but my life has been crammed with adventure and stuff.
Right.
So of course, and then if you write on top of your life being totally full, and then you're writing novels going back, 500,000 years, let's say. I mean, you could go, a brain could get weary. Our brain could get really weary. And so you need a journal. You need a journal so that you can go back and say, oh, that's what I was, trying to do. Or that's why I did that. And that's why she was mad at me because I was doing that, because you can't keep everything. You cannot do it. I mean, I cannot imagine there's a brain that can actually work on so many levels at once, and add on to that mothering.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I think all humans should have that experience, especially men. They need the experience of mothering. It would be so helpful. It would bring so much clarity.
I love that. I think that's absolutely true.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, otherwise, what are they going to do? I mean, it's right up there in importance with how men really need to cry. They need to be able to weep. Until they can weep with a full, expressive heart, how will they ever know where they are?
right.
I mean, as they say, in this vale of tears. I mean, really.
Yes. And the alternative so often is that they, beat their own hearts or
Well, I can't stand it. I mean, when I see what's done to men really in this culture, I do not like it at all.
yeah.
And I want to be right there with them, refusing, to let it be done to them. I mean, it's cruel.
It is cruel. And I see it as a parent to sons. Is to try to protect them.
Right. But imagine if someone said to you, don't cry. I mean, when your heart is breaking, they say, okay, don't cry. I mean, please. How cruel.
It is cruel. And I resonate because you talk about being a crier and crying easily.
Oh, I cry. Oh,
I cry all the time. So that makes me feel good.
I love it. I love being this way. I mean, you can never, just, oh, I mean, what would I do if I couldn't cry?
Yeah. Does the writing, is there a therapeutic piece, the journaling, I mean? Well,
Oh,
either. Yeah.
well, totally, of course,
In,
of
yeah.
course, because there you are in the middle of nowhere where I actually love to be often.
Mhm.
And there's no therapy, my therapist is like, wherever they are. And I'm, kind of nowhere. And so what do I have? I have my journal.
Yeah.
And my journal and I can have a session under a tree somewhere or by the river, if not actually in the river. I mean, it's just so portable. It's such a wonderful way to deal with yourself as you're carrying yourself, the one that's giving you some difficulty along with you.
Yeah. Are there any parts that on reflection you felt ambivalent about including?
In the journals.
Journals, yeah. Yeah.
Well, Valerie felt kind of, shaky about a few places. And we trimmed those and we softened those and we did what we could with those. We danced around a bit on those. But I'm very happy with what's there.
Yeah.
I see it as my life. And, there are people in my life, I truly want them not to be hurt or upset or bothered. But I offer them the freedom to write their own story. And if I'm in there, there I am.
Right. Well, isn't there, I can't remember was it an auntie who said that she didn't want you to write about her? I'm trying to remember the
Oh, no,
details.
no, Aunt Sally down in Florida, who should have been a revolutionary. She
Okay.
ended up in one of these very hard shelled, churches. But really, she would have made a great revolutionary. But
I
she had
remember
no,
were you
well,
talking
yeah,
about Pentecostalism and she was being a revolutionary? Yeah.
yeah, no, she, all these, well, not all of them, but a lot of these people who just get into these, terrible religions, that tell them basically that they can't have joy in their lives, essentially. They got off into that direction because really there was no revolution for them to join that they knew about in actually changing anything,
Right.
So there they are, then telling you, not to wear, whatever, and not to, I mean, they, all of that passion that could go into basically feeding the world, clothing the children, building housing, all of that's going into basically just trying to make other people live like they want them to live. And, it's not that helpful. So yeah, she was telling me when I asked her about my father, who I adored, but who by the time I was born was a different person from the radical kind of sharecropping, teacher finding, school building person that I would have loved not to know. But she said, well, if you wanted to know about your father, you should have asked him. And so she was not into my writing about him. And it was useless because, of course, I ended up writing about her
Right. Right.
because I'm a writer.
Right. I mean, I really, I loved and I say this, I want to say this the right way, the lack of piety, right? There's always respect and care with everyone's story, but you're not sort of confined as a writer. And I loved you showing that relationship. I was so moved by you talking about your father having built the school
Mhm.
that you all had access to, and
Mhm.
actually and how dangerous an endeavor that was to build a school for Black children.
Yeah, and he went out, to find the teachers to teach us.
Yeah, I mean,
No car.
it's just
How dedicated was that? And
yes,
then the school was burned down by the white people. And then they built another one. A great being.
stunning. Yeah,
But that's not the being I knew by the time after 8 children and, all kinds of horrible things. That was not the father that I encountered. I encountered someone who had been beaten down so badly that, that radiance that I I got a glimpse of as a very small child. It pretty much disappeared.
And the tenderness with which you tell both sides of that is so important. And so there's a kind of, we see as readers the journey of, for you writing The Color Purple and also possessing the secret of joy. And I mean, it's just, and warrior marks, and but also the relationship to your own experience, right? The wisdom that came from living and considering the people around you who you loved, how that connects to the work, right? Which is really beautiful. And your mother, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, there has been a stopper in our throat, our collective Black woman throat, kind of is the way I think about it. And it has been exploded recently. I mean, it's out, and you can read or look at so many things. Like I'm listening now to Viola Davis's book, and her story about her life and how incredibly challenging it was is so raw and so real. And you can tell that we have reached a place where we are really totally devoted to the truth of our existence. Whether people like it or not like it, or it's shocking or not, it's completely irrelevant. We want to know where we were, and what happened to us, so we understand who we are now and what our task continues to be. Yeah. And the same is true of Billy Porter's book, which I just finished. Is amazing. Yeah. Just such honesty. And then just on my desk, I don't know where it came from, but there's a book called Don't Worry If the Mule Goes Blind. I haven't read it yet, but it's a woman in Florida that I never heard of, talking about her family and her mother growing up as, I don't know how, I didn't really understand this, but at some point, Black people were, enticed down to Florida to work in the tomato, and all the fields.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what that was like, and how they became really re-enslaved.
Wow. Okay.
But she's right. My point is that she's writing with such raw clarity about what happened, that you really begin to see that what we're doing is we're making, complete liberation real.
Yeah.
With no more trying to make it soft enough for you to take, really.
And don't you think it's opening a door? Like there's rules, those rules about what not to say, right? They're both concerned with what the larger white world thinks, or it's not the larger, but the society. And also there's an internal set of rules, right? That things that are being opened up.
Well, I think we got beyond caring what people think when we realized they didn't think.
Right.
Really. Or we worry about what they're going to read when they're not reading.
Right.
It's useless. I mean, it's really about freeing yourself and freeing as many other people. I mean, Harriet knew this. You free yourself, and then you free as many others as you can. Because the abundance of life we deserve. We deserve to live freely, happily, without people telling us what to do with our bodies, who to be with, where to go, all of that. No, we deserve our freedom. If anybody has ever deserved it, we do.
You have a quote from Michelle Cliff that I'd never read before, that's something like, if you don't break the connective tissue, you wind up eating yourself, which just, there's something, I don't know if that's.
Well, yeah, you have to break that connective. Well, it was about watching, you should be very upset about this, but Jane Fonda, being interviewed. And there were two interviews. In one interview, she was great. She was free. She was talking. She was, and then somehow her father ended up interviewing her. Now, I don't know how this happened. This was years ago. And she actually became a little girl again with him. Yeah. And that's why that quote is in there about by Michelle Cliff. She said, until the connective tissue is broken, we continue to swallow ourselves. We can't quite let ourselves out. We can't be free in the world because we're always connected to whoever and whatever programmed us
Mm,
into silence and into being a good girl or boy or whatever.
yeah.
Mhm.
You but so I think there's right. So that it's about a liberation and becoming fully, and yet you're not and tell me if this is wrong, but you also sustain relationships in a way, in addition to insisting upon space for yourself, quiet for yourself, silence for yourself. That's hard. I mean, like that's a lesson to try to emulate how to do.
You learn,
Yeah.
you learn. I'm solitary. I love it. I'm a monk, basically. I mean, I've evolved fully into where I think I was headed. I'm completely happy being a monk. But even after you kind of reach that, you need your friends.
Yeah.
And, I'm a monk who loves to dance. So that means that I have to figure out in my life where I can have, weeks when I don't have to talk to anybody if I don't want to. And then a big dance idea will come upon me. And then I have to, remember that I have all these sister and brother dancers that I can call
Hmm.
and that we can get it together and we can have a wonderful 2 or 3 days, and then everybody will get danced out and then they go home, you know.
Hmm.
So I'm saying that you can create the life that suits you, really. But you have to understand what that is. You have to understand what that self is and what it needs to be, to basically to be able to offer the gift that is always forming.
Yeah. There's one of the things that stood out to me so much is the gratitude, the practice of gratitude, and how often you express gratitude for love and friends,
Mhm.
and that as part of the way of living, right? To getting to that answer. Also, this truly breathtaking love affairs, right?
Mm.
That you go through the arc of them and they come to an end, but they're they're still shimmering and luminous, right? It's not as though when they come to an end that you're like, sometimes you read people say you're like, oh, that, but they have their full beauty.
Uh-huh. Well, actually, true love doesn't end.
Yeah.
It transforms. And our job is to, sometimes with therapy, sometimes without therapy, to understand how to do that, to let go and evolve. Because we're all, becoming, we're always becoming.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons, many people do marriage to one person, like my parents were married, I think, for 40 years. And
Right.
some people do that very well because they can evolve in that.
Right.
But many people can't do it that way, and they shouldn't be expected to because you're on a journey. And sometimes whoever's on the journey with you, has to be different enough for you to keep learning.
Hmm.
So you don't want to stop learning or feel that you kind of know, oh, I know every single thing here and I'm staying anyway and I'll just turn on TV. That would not work for me, you know. And so knowing yourself, and this is another place where journaling is so good because journaling helps you to feel, those spaces where you have clarity about your own growth. And what it is you want to offer. And for me, it really is so often about what I want to offer and what I need to be able to offer. What I need to enable me to be able to offer something that I think is useful for the collective.
Yeah. Hmm. Is there at this moment, right, where we're about, I mean, there's so much that's tragic right now, but where we're one of the most immediate things is that Roe is about to be overturned. I mean, and I wonder if you think about sort of where both and I think about it sort of in the body of your work, but also in sort of in your voice and your, I don't know if in anybody, I assume that people who are on this know about your website, and you offer, these really profound essays frequently on there. But where should we, I mean, what resources are you thinking we should be drawing upon? Where do we find the, I don't know, the resources, the spirit, the community to do the work in this particularly dire moment? Or how do you think about what needs to happen for us in this moment to fight back?
Well, I think women are rising, and I would suggest also that men rise too,
Yeah.
because I think the very sad reasoning behind all of this is to make sure that they recreate white male dominance. They don't even care about the white women. They just want them to make some white men for them.
Right.
But the fallacy really is that they don't, these particular justices, because of their age and everything and their capacities, they don't seem to grasp that the real focus of, kind of the people who want to control things is in robots. So actually white men too will be obsolete. I mean, that way of, they're planning like people who really, I was going to say are of a certain age, but then I am too. But they don't seem to grasp that their remedy won't work. There's no way that these white men that they are hoping to bring into being, to counter these Mexicans and Salvadorians and Africans and Indians, that they're so afraid of. I mean, there's no way that, they're going to be able to escape the onslaught of the new robotic world.
Yeah.
And that is the world we should be really looking at, and they should be helping us. They should be saying along with us, we don't want robots. Instead of humans, we like humans.
I love that way of that clarity, because I think we often forget that there's a cost to everybody to domination, and it's not equally distributed, but there's the cutting off of the fullness of our humanity is, everybody suffers, right? To a greater or lesser extent.
Well, the greatest victim of all of this, of course, is the planet, and the assault on it is so horrid, especially now when they're just shooting elephants from the air and, taking over large parts of the Maasai territory for trophy hunting. I mean, so my feeling most days is basically, and this, gets to, kind of that really sad place, that it's just as well that we're going, I mean, we humans, not necessarily you or me, but so many humans in quote power have wrecked so much that if you really love the planet, you can only hope that humans leave.
You discuss a political debate at one moment, and it comes up in the journals about where you talk about the planet as a being, and I think we're now more likely to recognize it as such, but still, it's treated as something just to sort of be used, not as
amazing. It's extraordinary when you really connect with this planet, that there are beings who actually don't even see it. It's just, is mind-boggling and beyond, and really it makes you think that the planet has been colonized by, whoever came here from wherever, and that the fight that they have is to dominate the planet itself, to destroy the planet itself, not so much us. We're just in the way.
Right.
But it's like a disease, it's like a virus has hit Earth in all her wonderful beauty, beautiful, just exuberance. Earth is amazing,
Mhm.
but she's being attacked. And in fact, Sweet Honey in the Rock used to have a song about that. You remember that song about how the Earth was running for her life?
Yes.
And I feel that. I feel it very much. I mean, we're in a cosmos that's enormous. We have no way of even comprehending how big it is. And so obviously it's totally possible that there are forces from somewhere, wherever, that feed on planets like ours, beautiful planets, and so it's not even about us. I mean, it's more about her,
Yeah.
it.
Well, it's funny because I find myself always saying with, some of these large corporations, like, or billionaires, like, you have so much wealth that, but this cost of it is you're destroying the thing that feeds you, that feeds your what, like, you're
Yeah.
creating a place where your children and your grandchildren won't be able to live, and it seems incoherent, right?
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
the lack of basic sense of sort of collective preservation, um that
Well,
may
we're not a part of their collective.
that's okay, right?
So once you get that, that's helpful.
That's helpful.
And they do feel that they don't need the same things that we do. I mean, we want love and compassion. That's not what they're interested in at all. They want control, power, and a bunker somewhere that's impervious to whatever's happening to us.
Mhm.
But that's because that's who they are. I mean, that's just who they are. And we have to accept that, that there are beings who are like that, where we are different.
Mhm. Are you gardening still? You talk about gardening quite a bit.
Well, at the moment, I'm not.
I know you talk to me, but I mean the season.
Coming out of winter, but yes, of course. I mean, I'm a gardener. I will always, as long as I can lift a trowel, plant something. In fact, I did plant a new garden in Mexico last month, 2 months ago, and it's flourishing. I'm not there, but it's flourishing. Yeah, it's just part of my nature. I come from people who couldn't even imagine not having a garden. I mean, it just wasn't in their realm of thought. I mean, how could you not have a garden? And
Right.
that's why they would never live in cities. I mean, they, from as far back as I can remember, they had no interest in living off the ground. Like, why would you want to live somewhere you can't touch the ground?
Yeah.
Like Atlas. I mean, they didn't know that Greek myth, about how Atlas, if you held him up off the ground, he lost his power. That's happened to us.
Mm-hmm.
All these people, all of us in high rises, we've lost at least half of our power.
Yeah. It's funny. I noticed. I wrote a little essay about it that in the midst of the quarantine,
Mm,
people started start creating little gardens. And I
mhm,
thought that was such a sort of fundamentally human thing that people were getting back in touch with, wanting to
mhm.
touch the earth.
Yeah, no, that's been a very good thing. I'm so into it. I love it. Every time I see someone, starting a garden, getting their plants and teaching other people, I'm just totally in love with that.
Mhm. Is that part of home? I mean, because I think it's so interesting that you are very much um, sort of a global presence, and you're also very much a Black Southern woman.
Mhm.
Is it a home? I mean, is that part of how home carries with you when you in these other places, or is it? Does that make
Is it
sense?
what?
The gardening or the connection to the earth, does that feel like a part of the home, your origin?
Oh, absolutely, of course. I come from generations of gardeners in all areas.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's the Native American part, there's the African American, there's the English, Scottish part,
Yeah.
all gardeners, all
Mm-hmm.
of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel totally, in my own skin, with all of them, and what they would have loved, and what they would have cherished, and how they would have just gotten on with it. I mean, feeding your children, feeding the people in the community, feeding yourself by planting something is just the most logical thing on earth. I honestly find it hard when people don't have gardens, when they don't, I mean, when they really are totally dependent on a store. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I know we can because we look out the window and there are the people coming out of the store, but there's something fundamentally insane about depending on, a supply that you don't have yourself, that you can't, you know.
Reach for your, have your.
Mhm.
One of the questions, I'm gonna keep asking some questions, but I do want to include other folks who are
Okay.
patiently waiting. But one
Mm.
of them is, and I know the answer because I read the whole book, but is there another volume coming?
Well, Valerie and I were discussing that because it was, this part was 1,000 pages. And I had to trust her to cut it in half, which she did. And I finally was, like, okay, fine. And that's why I added those little parts at the end, because I said, well, Valerie, I really need to take some of these little pieces that you cut out and put them somewhere
Yeah.
because I love them. I love them. I mean, for instance, we had to take out a lot of dreams.
Oh,
And for me, that was one of the more challenging things because I feel so directed by my dreams. And I feel like that's a capacity that people have lost,
mm-hmm.
that they don't understand the important, and you know who did understand the Aboriginal people of Australia, when they would use, I don't know what they talk about now, but they used to talk about the dream time. And the dream time I came to understand through my own dreaming, which was profuse, is the way that people used to learn. I mean, they used to be learning in their dreams because they can be incredibly instructive.
Mm-hmm.
And then education went about thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And then education grew out of that because people wanted to understand what they were talking about. There you get up, you have this amazing dream, right? You get up in the morning, you, you sitting around the campfire, you start telling this incredible thing. And they got, well, how did you know that? Well, you dreamed it.
Yeah.
And that's the dream time. That's the dream time. So I wanted more of that, but we couldn't put in more of that because it would throw off some of the other things. And we
Okay.
only had 500 pages.
Okay. So perhaps a second volume? What do you think?
Well, if I can find someone like Valerie, someone who is just completely, the thing about Valerie, I don't know how well you knew her, but she was extremely direct.
Mhm.
And yet, and she could tell you exactly what was on her mind, but you knew she loved you
Yeah.
and that it was going to be fine because you could slog through it.
Yeah.
And to have a friend like that is just the best.
I didn't know her that well, but I felt that when she was clear about telling me what she liked more than other things that I wrote, right?
Mhm.
But it was you're right. It's hard to explain because it didn't, sometimes when people tell you stuff, it feels like that, you're wounded in a way that I didn't experience with it.
Right. No. And also she left, we left enough, in there, I felt to do. And we have, I mean, of course, there could be a second volume. I mean, they didn't get all my journals either, so they don't even have, but who knows, I mean, I feel no pressure. I'm totally happy to be at home, not, doing anything but being there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Here's a question from Jatem. She writes, "The color purple was formative for the awakening of a generation of Black women who had never seen a story written from their perspective.
Mhm.
When writing The Color Purple, was this part of your intent?"
Yes, because until we can be really honest about our ancestral journey, as women, it's really hard to be authentic.
Yeah.
Authenticity matters. So I was seeing, and we all see, everywhere, a lot of fakery. I mean, it's like, you know, denying our own path while trying to kind of emulate a path that we don't really deeply respect. It has been like, fraying of our spirits, like just, something always not right.
Mm-hmm.
So by writing in the voice of, someone in the real voice, and actually with my step grandmother, Rachel, who is Seeley, that's the only thing I could remember in her voice was actually one syllable. And I had to extrapolate from that. But I felt it so deeply and loved her so much, and then I had this mystery, like what did happen to her too? She had two children too, but what happened to them? Nobody ever said what happened to my grandmother's children. What happened to them? So part of my job was to write a story where she, has a life. She has two children. They do get taken away from her, but they come back and they make her happy.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make her happy. And why did I want to make her happy? Because when I was 8 years old, she made me happy. We have love. We do. And if we forget it, shame on us.
One of the things that I said, oh, this is absolutely true, but I don't know that is always counted as such. You described The Color Purple as a story with a happy ending. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
part of why we love it so much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's because also it's about family.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so despairing to realize that people didn't see the value of everybody having his or her journey, getting knocked around and going here, there, and thither, and all these things. But at the end, you come back home, you sit on the porch together, and you share the journey. You share all the journeys, and that's what family is made of.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think this point about the ancestral, and I think it's implied in the question because as one of a member of that generation who came up reading The Color Purple over and over again, and I mean in your other novels as well, but seeing it as about us, right? And for me, as someone who was brought out of the South and was always feeling homesick, seeing that it's interesting because it's an ancestral self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not literally, my story, but it's mine, right? It's ours.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's ours. All of us on that porch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when the film was made, and Mr., even though he, Stephen tried to make him, okay, and blah, 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 he didn't quite get it. He didn't get it that he deserved to be on the porch.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a family member. He should be right there. And that was a big mistake, not to have him there.
Yeah.
But it's a place where, as an artist, you understand that the art that Stephen was creating didn't quite grasp from our culture what that meant.
Right.
And when that happens, actually what you do is you forgive. I mean, if it's not horrendous, because he did do good things, and we got to see that he was trying, right? So that's good. But he couldn't quite make that leap for whatever reason. And at that point, you then, in your magnanimous heart, you say, okay, so he's not there, but he's trying. One day he will be there.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, from my perspective and in my work, in my book, he was there.
Yeah.
He made it home.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm saying. We can make it home. We can. And we have to remember that. But you can't make it home abusing people. You cannot. They'll always shut the door in your face. You have to be humble. You have to be loving. You have to show up. You have to give of yourself. You have to grow to be on that porch. And when you get on that porch, that's heaven.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Okay, here's a question. I have enjoyed learning from you, Alice Walker. You are a true world treasure. True. In addition to journaling, I'd love to know how you nurture your gifts during difficult times.
I like to have a nice, big, fluffy bed somewhere. And a nice audio book, or a raunchy one or a crazy one. One that I really like a lot is Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell.
Okay.
It's so well done and it's so funny. It's also borderline, problematic, and you'll see what I mean if you listen to it. But there's something so good about just, calling it a day sometimes when things are just, beyond your capacity to deal, and just climbing into your bed with a nice, your version of a hot toddy and a nice audiobook, and just going into another world, a world that teaches you something, a world that hopefully makes you chuckle. Then of course, they're the usual other things: walking, gardening. I love swimming when the weather is good. Having meals with friends. I mean, all the simple things. They're all simple.
Mm-hmm. The simple pleasures. I always say that my grandmother taught me the power of a simple pleasure. That's one of the most important things. Just the small things that actually keep your life good and sweet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a question about the David Icke thing.
David Icke.
Icke, I'm sorry, I mispronounced. I don't know much about
It's better than Icky. Some people say Icky. They
Right.
haven't bothered to learn to say his name.
And so people are saying, do you have any regrets about endorsing his book?
No, I don't. It's a very interesting book. And I believe that I get to read whatever I want to read.
Okay.
So there.
And that's an important distinction, right? Because there is between, this idea that there's some things you can and can't engage, coming from certain, and yeah, so.
No, I believe I have a right to read whoever I like. I have a right to really listen to whoever I want to listen to. And I think people who try to prevent that, we should watch out for. I mean, I think they're a danger. I mean, can you imagine trying to tell somebody what they cannot read and who they cannot like?
Well, I can't, I think, especially because so much of what, as a Black woman, I am expected to read is not necessarily sweet and tender to who I am, and yet I continue to read those things and be.
Exactly. You read Faulkner, right? Faulkner said if it came to it, he'd shoot us down in the street.
Listen, I mean, really.
I mean, how many of the American canonical writers are racist? I mean, almost all of them. I mean, until, as we used to say in the South here recently,
Right.
they were. I mean, that's the culture that, especially in the South, prevailed. And you don't hear people saying, well, don't read Huck Finn, and you don't read. I mean, it doesn't wash. I mean, we would have nobody to read, really, if we cleared out all the racists, all the sexist, all the homophobic writers. I mean, we would not.
Is there anything that you've read recently that has surprised you, or particularly excited, that you haven't mentioned already? Mentioned a couple of.
Oh my God, so much has been surprising me, but the most amazing one just last week. And in fact, this book is helping to prop up my thing here. My cousin sent me a biography of Bessie Head. I don't know if you know anything about Bessie Head, but this is a biography of this African writer who lived in Botswana. I knew nothing about. I published her when I was an editor at Ms. Magazine, and that's how we met, right? Now, we often talk about how hard it is for writers, women especially, but any poor writer. I mean, it's not easy. Um, but this book is called Thunder Behind My Ears, and it was written published in the late 90s, 90s. I'd never heard of it. It's excellent.
Oh, wow.
And it shows you this woman writing by candlelight in a hut in Botswana, raising her son by herself. The local people thinking she was a mad woman. From month to month, having almost no money coming in, and writing some of the finest work anywhere, but especially out of Africa.
Wow.
Without Bessie Head, you don't really get Africa.
Okay, I'm gonna get that.
Well, I hope you can find it, because this one she sent me, this copy is all tattered and everything.
Okay, wow.
But it is incredible, and I've just been stuck there the last week, just saying to your friend Rebecca, my
Yes.
goodness, I had no idea. I mean, I knew she was struggling,
Yeah.
writers with children, and she was a stateless person. She had to leave South Africa, and they made her show up every week to just declare that she was still in Botswana. I mean, incredible story.
Mhm.
So there's that.
Yeah. Okay. We only have a little bit more time, but I did want to ask you about, so one of the pieces of yours that I teach most frequently is In Search of Our Mother's Garden. Search of Our Mother's Garden is the essay part, right?
Mhm.
And about sort of, and also to think about, to teach you to think about the generations, right? And the artists who did not have the name artist, right? Who had other names, but that come from our tradition. Now you are the mother of an artist, you're a writer who has mothered a writer. And I'm wondering about what that's like from your perspective.
It's incredible. I mean, it's really, Rebecca just came out with a new book on money.
It's so important.
I
It's
can't,
so yeah.
it is, you see, and that's when mothers just, we're so grateful for whatever they got from, our environment, and whatever it was, that they come up with these gifts to the culture. This is a major gift to the culture. Women talking about money and beginning to understand money and how important it is to really have a handle on how you can provide for yourself, and often, being women, you and your children.
Yes.
So I keep telling her that in my opinion, it's a classic, this book, because women and men too, actually, but mostly women, can learn how to navigate these treacherous waters that we are bound to be trying to swim in as we, do our work, raise our children, try to keep, some semblance of civility in a society that is crazy, a lot of the time, and dangerous as well.
And
So,
it's people don't talk about, right? It winds up being a very hush hush conversation, and it opens up.
well, I think part of it, I don't know, but when she was growing up, she got to see me every month trying to juggle, how much money was coming in and how much money we were going to need to survive for the next month. And I think something of seeing that as a child, is very helpful.
Yes.
I watched my mother, can every summer. She canned everything we ate. She could even can fried chicken. I mean, my mother was incredible.
That's amazing.
But her idea was that she was the mother, and damn it, she was going to provide. That was her attitude. And I think that is a bedrock attitude in the family that Rebecca and I, share, that we are the mother, and we are going to provide. And the house, as you know, in many Native cultures, always belongs to the mother.
That's right. Right.
Not like in European culture where it belongs to the man and the children belong to the man. In other cultures that are more sensible, the house is the mother's and the children, belongs to the mother and the children. And they no longer want your presence, if you're not acting right, they put your shoes outside the door. How about that?
Okay. Okay, this is the very last question. We might be a minute or two over, but I do want to get this question in. Michelle asks, I'm thinking about Lissy in the Temple of My Familiar and her profound reminder to us that the soul is timeless. Would you be willing to talk about the power of having multiple lives in a lifetime?
Well, I have certainly had multiple lives, but I think Lissy is a good example of just the wonder of this experience as humans, that we barely know what's possible here. You know, we look out at nature and we see that it's magical and strange and wonderful and varied. But that same kind of thing can happen in your life and in your lifetime, you know, just based on the experiences you have. They change you. I'm a different woman than the woman who went to Africa to make a film about female genital mutilation. I'm a different woman because when I got back and I was, you know, trying to enlighten people and, you know, showing the film, it was startling to me that there were people who actually thought that wasn't my business. You know, even today, I think, wow. So, you know, that is what happens. You transform as you meet the challenge that transforms you. You know, and you actually sometimes see people stuck in addiction because for whatever reason, they haven't been able to make that step. You know, they get caught. But if you can, as my parents used to say, stay in your right mind, you know, you can keep evolving and have many lifetimes in this one.
And on that note, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been fun.
And please give Rebecca my love.
I will. Take care. Bye.
I want to thank you both so much for all your words of wisdom, all of the ideas of the last hour. I want to thank everybody who joined us here tonight and let you know that there are many more programs that BPL Presents and the Center for Brooklyn History have coming up. And speaking of ideas, if you're local and near Brooklyn, the Night of Ideas on May 21st is something not to miss. I hope you'll explore that. But mostly, heartfelt thanks to both of you for this conversation and wishing everyone a very good night. Good night.